Hey, thanks for tuning into the Zelos Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This is the show that's all about the pros behind the pros in sports. And this week, Derek Landry is joining me. He is the return to performance specialist for Chicago Fire Football Club. MLS, baby. It's just about to get underway next month. Preseason's right around the corner. And before he started to roll up his sleeves, he was able to sit down and have a conversation with me. Before we get underway, I want to make sure you check out my website, rockysnyder.com, for podcast archives, weekly blogs. We've got online courses, whether they're in person or, well, online, I guess. There's a difference there. I should probably check my script next time. In the meantime, before we get underway, hey, listen to a few of our sponsors, and then we're going to get right into it. This episode of the Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kineticiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption, like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, it's trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, Z-E-L-O-S. And before we get underway, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder, S-N-Y-D-E-R. Click subscribe, give us some comments, tell a few friends, enjoy the show. Well, Derek, first of all, thanks for coming on Zelos Podcast. I know you're just about to kick off for the 2026 season, and before it gets underway, you put a little time aside for me. So thank you and welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So give us the rundown. I call it the superhero origin story, but how did Derek Landry end up with Chicago Fire FC?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the long story is I played soccer growing up, and I think like most of us who get into this industry, we're failed athletes, and we kind of look back on our career and we're like, well, what could I have done differently? And for me, it was the sports performance side of things, and I was actually working in finance when I originally left college, and I was at the same time I was playing semi-professional soccer. And I just started looking into ways to train myself. And the deeper I went down the rabbit holes, the more interested I got. And then I learned that you could make a career out of it. And so luckily, I have a very supportive wife, and she allowed me to quit my job in finance and pursue this. So as most of us who've gone through the industry, obviously, a lot of us start off at the intern level where we're not getting paid. So we know it's a pretty big sacrifice, especially from our spouses. And but it was the best move I could have ever made.
Dude,
And
that is so you have no idea how actually common that has become. I just had a guy from Colorado Rapids telling me almost the same story. He had a family like finance business. He was into it, but his heart wasn't, and he decided to make the change. His dad went nuts, I guess, and but it here he is being performance director and so on, just like yourself. So, but you're
yep.
still crunching numbers. We'll talk about that with sports science in a minute. But okay, where did you go to school?
So I went to UNC Charlotte for my undergraduate degree, and then I went to the University of St. Mary's Twickenham in London for kind of a distance learning, strength conditioning specific master's. So
Really?
that was it was amazing, really great program, and I took it pretty slow. I was working at the time, so I think I took it for like three maybe 4 years, just dragged it out and used some of those as my continuing education and just enjoyed it. So it was a great experience.
How did you end up there?
To be honest with you, I was kind of doing my research um, uh, around different colleges in the United States, and I mean, none of them really stood out to me. I know there's a lot of really great ones, but then I saw this one. The program director, Dan Cleather, was putting a lot of stuff out on social media at the time, just willing to kind of challenge the norms in strength conditioning and sports science, and that was something that I was interested in because I want to. I want to be able to challenge and to be challenged as well, and that's the best way that I learn. So to have a program director who is doing that and offering kind of new ways to look at things, that was really exciting. And then uh, like most of us, I was seeking out the cheapest option, and it was actually a great deal. So it was kind of all around great decision from an education standpoint.
And did you play football slash soccer while you were over in the UK?
Oh no, I didn't go over there. So
Oh,
this
it
was
was an
an
online
on
kind of.
yeah,
I
yep.
got
So
you.
an online
Did the
distance
same
learning.
thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Completely understand. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. What town did you, or state did you grow up in? You don't have to go too deep, but
Yeah, so I grew up in Georgia, kind
okay.
of the northeast Atlanta area. So yeah, I'm used to the South, but obviously with in this industry, we get to go all over the country if you follow it. So
And how did you get to land with Chicago Fire?
yeah, so that's it's a long story as well. So
Okay, we only got
when I was
45 minutes and I want to get to some other stuff, but go do your
okay.
best.
All right. So, I mean, long story short, so back in 2019, I was working at IMG, and the U.S. men's national team came, and I'd listened to a podcast with Darcy and Steve Tashian, and so I reached out, just asked if I could come out and watch a practice, and they were very welcoming and allowed me to come out and kind of talk me through everything that they were doing, which was unbelievable. And so I met Jordan Webb as well for the first time, and then. So fast forward to 2023 is the beginning of our season when I was with Colorado Rapids 2 and the MLS Next Pro, and I heard another podcast from Darcy. I reached back out and just we started talking shop a little bit, and then I think it might have been 2 or 3 weeks later he reached out and was like, "Hey, we've got this spot with the U.S. men's national team for the year, just through Gold Cup and Nations League." And I was very fortunate to get that opportunity, and it was a very timely opportunity as well, just for my career and where I wanted to go. And so that was kind of a year long interview with Darcy, and then once Darcy got the position here at Chicago. He was putting the team together and trying to kind of figure out what roles they were gonna uh, that we're gonna have here and where I might be able to fit in. And the return to play role came up, which was extremely interesting for me, just because I dipped my feet in all the different waters in sports science, strength conditioning, um, and more of the on-field movement skill type stuff. So uh, it was a it was a no-brainer for me, mainly because of the people that I'd get to work with and work for. But then the role itself was exactly what I wanted because I I want to be a generalist. Like I like being able to do all the different things, whether it's sports science, be on the field, passing the ball with guys, the movement skills, like all those things interest me. And so I wanted a role where I could continue to do that and not have to go just down one rabbit hole of sports science or the strength conditioning. But yeah, that's how I ended up in Chicago, and it's been a amazing decision. The last year was an interesting year. Obviously, you have a new staff coming in with holdovers from the old staff who it's just that blending of people that I think anybody who's been in that situation knows that it comes with its ups and its downs, and you have to try to work through those things in the first year while you're building, trying to build something amazing. So it's again been an amazing experience so far.
That is awesome, Derek. For the listening audience, he mentions Darcy, and that's Darcy Norman. And I gotta say, it was last June. At the end of June, I was in LA attending the Sportsmith conference, and it was primarily like lower body injury, return to performance. That was the key there. And then the night of the first day of conferences, there was a gathering at one of like the brew pubs or whatever, and I'm just wandering around saying hi to some friends I knew and connecting with some faces and podcast guests and so on. And here's this guy just kind of on his phone sitting over in the corner. And I don't know, I just latched over there. It turned out to be Darcy Norman. And we started talking, and it was like instant connection. Every now and then you meet somebody, and it's just like, boom, you're deep in conversation. And then we're mentioning this person or that person, can't get over how almost incestuous the strength and conditioning world is. It's like it's such an interconnected web of people where you know this person, they know this person, yet we've never met, and so on. So, what I got from my conversation with him is you've got some top talent there, and to be part of that team with Darcy, man, I'm quite envious because yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot of brilliant minds, and I'm sure you're one of them. Um, so just that's a little side note. So if anybody's interested, and hopefully listening audience, once again, Darcy has agreed to get on the show. We just have to nail down a time somewhere. But with the season underway, I don't know. We might be hard pressed. I think we'll be having to wait until November, but we'll see. Anyway, um, here's the thing: return to performance, return to play, return to performance. I can totally dig that. I love that. That's what my master's is in. And so I know we're going to get into that. And I love the fact that it feels like you're in the middle. I won't say the middle of the web so much, but or the spectrum, however you want to label it. But you said you're a generalist and you can go into all these different environments. And I think having a position as whether you call yourself the rehab strength conditioning specialist or the return to performance specialist or whatever, somewhere where you can have your feet in so many different areas that do you feel like you're the linchpin in some ways, or I don't know what you'd call it, but you're definitely a connector. That's what it is.
Mm.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely elements of that, and I think just by the nature of the role being kind of between performance and medical, and coordinating with our so we have a return to play coordinator who's more on the medical side, and I'm the return to play specialist who's more on the performance side, and so we kind of meet in the middle. We have a lot of daily interaction, a lot of communication between him and I. So that's mainly where my communication goes from performance into medical and vice versa. But I'm also supporting the performance staff in any way possible, jumping in on team lifting sessions and on field warm ups where I can, on field movement sessions, so on and so forth. So um, I wouldn't say it's a linchpin. It's just I sit in the middle of it, so I have the opportunity to be able to try to connect as many of those things as possible. And really for me, learning more about the medical side has been really good. Obviously, you mentioned some of the other roles that I've had in the sports science, the strength conditioning, and then kind of all of those things from a performance side when I was with in the MLS Next Pro. But then on the medical side, you don't get to spend as much time really diving into how they're thinking and what they're doing because you're just all your time's being pulled over here. So that's that's what this position has offered me, and that's what is the most intriguing about it is because I'm starting to learn more about diagnosis. I'm starting to learn more about the early stage and how we want to handle that. And I think there's a lot of similarities between obviously performance and return to play, and I know we'll probably dive into that. So I don't want to steal the
Yeah.
thunder on that one.
No, no worries. Okay, so let's just talk about like the continuum in rehabilitation the from the medical side where it's acute or even a chronic issue through all the way to return to performance, there's all
Hmm.
of these stages. Which one do you find is the most challenging stage of all?
I think for me, I mean, it's not for me personally from a because I'm not in it dealing with it right then.
Sure.
But obviously, when the athlete gets injured, right, you see the look on their face. It's a defeated look, like, come on, man. And so nobody's happy once they get injured, right? But
Uh,
that serves as the opportunity to try to help them reframe this opportunity because when you're playing every single weekend or you're practicing the team with the team, it's very difficult to find the time to work on some of the movement skills that you might be deficient at. It's tough to find some of the time to get that individual work that person may need to become more robust for the years to come and have a more prolonged career. So that's where the opportunity lies. And so, from the perspective of thinking of it as the hardest time, that would certainly be the most difficult time. And I think it's managing expectations going into this rehab process. And obviously, like, they need their time to sort out their thoughts after an injury happens. You can't just rush in and be like, oh, everything's going to be all right. We're going to do this, that, and the other. Um, but it certainly lends itself to having an opportunity to uh, reframing that for the athlete, getting them to understand the training process a little bit more because they're going to be in it for the next however long their diagnosis is, um, and however long they train and are able to get back to play. So, I think it's to me that's the hardest part. But again, I'm a little bit more removed from that, but I try to offer some good vibes and some humor
well,
to help out in those type of situations.
you've got to build trust, of course, and some buy-in with these players as they're going through this journey back to performance. So,
Hmm.
what are some key strategies? Have you like you may not even recognize them consciously as strategies, perhaps, and it's probably really the answer to it. But if you could step back and look, what would you say are some, whether it's the tone of voice, your coaching cues, certain metrics that you're using, how do you get them to build trust in the process that you're putting them through, as well as the buy-in?
Yeah, I think some of that takes care of itself as you go on throughout the season. Guys will get injured. That's just the nature of the beast. And those guys have an experience, and sometimes it's word of mouth of like, "Hey, you don't want to get injured," but it's from a good place, right? Because it's like we're gonna have a plan for the athlete 100%. We're from the medical side, from the performance side, we have a plan. We've sit down or we'll sit down with the athlete. We'll talk about what the progression looks like. And that doesn't mean that it's going to go perfectly every single time, but from our perspective, it's can we get them in? Can we get them to buy into the work for that day, understanding where it fits in the process, and it's just stacking these days, and that's what it comes down to. Rather than, I do think having a goal of getting back by this time is great, but for us, we're going to look at the athlete. How well do they function? We're going to look at some of the objective data that we get through Vault or through the 1080 Sprint, through GPS, and then we're going to start building these training blocks, right? And so we operate in three different or in a 3 day block. So we go linear, multi-directional, and kind of more of an aerobic recovery day. And so we kind of just stack those 3 day blocks back to back to back. And then once that athlete starts to get a little bit closer to a return to play, we start to flip flop that. We have more of the multi-directional day first into the linear, and then into that rest to kind of match what the weekly flow of the team will be like.
Why? Why
So
do you do that? Why do you switch that around? Why do you start with linear, go multi-directional, and then aerobic, and then switch it to multi to linear? I'm
yeah,
curious.
so when we're thinking about the complexity of the environment that we're going to set up for that athlete on that day, especially earlier on, as the athlete kind of transitions out of that, out of more of the medical side and more into the performance side, like really focusing on locomotive movement skills, linear. movement skills are going to be the least complex, right? And so whenever we get them from 2 days off or from a day off on the weekend, and they come in on that Monday doing something that's less complex, we kind of understand exactly what we're going to get from that athlete. It's an easy progression. We say, okay, if you've done these box to boxes, if you did six box to boxes last time we had a linear day, we're going to try to increase the volume or increase the intensity of that. So it's very easy to just increase the workload on the athlete. And so that's why we opt to go to that linear first earlier on. And then when we flip and we do the multi-directional, so um, a lot of teams tend to operate on this like match day -4 will do more small spaces. Match day -3 will increase the size of the pitch, will go more extensive, which is going to tax more hamstrings, high speed running, whereas the -4 will be more of that change directions, more quads, hips, right? And so we want to flip flop that so that the athlete is used to those two exposures in that sequence. So them going from multi-directional, understanding how that's going to feel, what the carryover effect is going to be going into a match day -3 or the linear day, and then being able to still execute high speed running, sprinting on that day. I personally, we just feel like that's going to be the best thing for the athlete in terms of um, being appropriate with the loading earlier on and not taking unnecessary risk. And then as we've built this training volume and this training load for the athlete, switching them to something that matches what they're going to need to be able to do at the team level. I feel like that prepares them in the best way possible.
Great answer. I love that. And it makes complete sense. So we're talking about primarily on the pitch, but does that carry over into the weight room? So you're going to do primarily like sagittal plane motions and then switch over to multi-directional loaded patterns in the gym setting, or do you not carry it over in that way? How does that work?
So we kind of approach that in a different way. So earlier on, when in the more acute phases, when the athlete is primarily with my medical counterpart Sergio, they'll come to me. It's mainly just upper body at that point because Sergio is taking care of kind of the cross education, or he's doing a lot for the injury specific loading, right? And then as they transfer to me, kind of in that mid stage, if you will, we start to transfer more into an upper lower split. And I've gone to more of the upper lower split just because again uh, it makes it simple to follow from a I know I'm not overloading them in the gym lower body on the first day, and then the second day we come back and then we're hitting legs, right? So I think it decreases the risks associated with lifting and maybe some DOMs that they might have, which again goes back to the buy-in, right? So if every day they feel like they're doing something super heavy for their legs, some guys might check out, right? If they haven't
Sure.
been used to the gym, that's a novel stimulus for them, right? So it's to try to add that load in a novel way, and then have them also perform on the field during on-field movement skills or the position-specific type work, I think is asking quite a lot of the athletes. So we've decided to take this upper-lower approach, knowing that we're going to do all of our lower on the second day, knowing that the next day we'll come back, we'll have an aerobic recovery day, allow you to get flushed out a little bit. The movement is not going to be any high intensity movement, no long passes, anything like that on that next day. So we feel more comfortable with that strategy, and especially in these 3 day blocks that we work in, knowing that if I do this in this first 3 days and then I come back, the athlete will have enough in the tank to be able to really push it those next 3 days, and then have the 2 days to recover at the end of the week, and then come back and do it all again.
Beautiful. Okay, you mentioned this that you've got obviously multinational players. So the 2025 squad, you guys, as far as I have done my homework here, 34 players, out of which 14 were designated as foreigners. So it's just over 40% of your squad is coming from either Europe, Central America, aka Mexico, and South America, like Colombia and Argentina. So, couple things with that. Like this is a sport where the United States is relatively young compared to so many other countries. So the protocols, the strategies that you have in place with Chicago, are they mimicking what is being done in Europe, Central America, South America? I mean, do the players, when they get here, is it fairly homogenous with what they're accustomed to? Or is it something that's, oh man, here's this American that's just completely doing something quite way different than what I'm used to? Like, how does that lay out?
I think it's quite a shock for them, to be honest. And yeah, so
How
I
so
mean,
though?
we
Because I'm curious. It's like we Americans, we just know. And this is, and if there's
yeah.
anything good outside of our borders, we're just going to rename it and put a flag on it and claim it for our own. But yeah, I'm curious. Like, what's the shock?
Yeah, I think the shock, especially as it pertains to the return to play environment, uh, and this is not to generalize any other country or any other club how they may do things, but I think the way that we approach return to play is more intense, if not, or just as intense as what team training would be. So, I mean, guys are doing, if even if they can't walk, guys might be on the airdyne crushing energy system development, right? That may not be something that they're used to doing
Wow.
elsewhere at that stage in return to play. So they're they're working from, I mean, as soon as they can get on the airdyne pain free, they're going to start doing that for their energy system development.
I
So
could see that being a positive. I can see them going, whoa, they're not just letting me rest all here. They're stepping up my recovery.
100%. Yeah. So that is the consensus at the end of Return to Play when whatever they've been brought back, right? And they look back on their process and they're like, okay, I understand why we did that, right? But if you're working with a guy, let's say you have a longer term injury like an ACL, you may be doing a couple months at on the airdyne where they're doing that twice a week and they're going extremely hard on the airdyne, and it's tough every single time they do it because they're able to ramp up their power output on the airdyne, and so again, like it's new for a lot of guys, and even the American guys, right? It's just new. Working that hard that early on may not be something that they're used to, and but I do think it is especially challenging or eye-opening for the guys who come from different places that we are pushing this hard in return to play, which in my opinion, like that's how it should be, and I think everybody on our staff agrees with that. Is we want them to come back fitter than when they left. We want them coming back faster than when they left and moving better. Right? Those are kind of our keys to return to play and trying to get guys back.
We're just going to take a quick pause from this conversation to acknowledge our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. The Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere with just an iPad or iPhone. No wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. At the forefront of Metabolic Elite is Jim Lavelle, internationally recognized clinical pharmacist, a chief science officer at Lifetime, and the co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's got over 4 decades of experience and has guided Olympic athletes, professional teams, and leading health institutions. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. Like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses, They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, it's trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, ZELOS. Yeah, and you're not doing this blindly. Obviously, you've got objective data that you're using, whether
Correct.
it's workload, readiness metrics, GPS, if they are able to get out on the pitch and move around,
Hmm.
force plate, velocity-based training. All these things are things you use from an objective standpoint, and yet you also have subjective landmarks or input. So how do you marry all that together? Like, how do you take the sports science and the performance data with your own coach's eye and what you're picking up on?
Hmm. Yeah, I think at the as you're going throughout the process, things can work like an equalizer board, right? So if you like music, like think of it as an equalizer board. So you have range of motion, you have maybe force, you have velocity, you have fatigue, you have the complexity of the environment, right? So as we're going, we're trying to understand which equalizer buttons we want to turn up, which dials we want to turn up at the appropriate times. And for each one of those, we have different ways of measuring different metrics to measure within those. So yeah, it's certainly not blind. And as we're going throughout the process, let's say we're working on force. Well, we may start building that up very early on with isometrics. We have force frame, we have force decks, NordBoard. So there's tons of ways for us to look at that from an isometric perspective and start to close that gap, maybe left to right, looking at limb symmetry index, looking at the peak forces that we can get. RFD becomes really important, especially prior to us starting to load in higher rate of force development activities out on the field. So all of those technology providers you just mentioned are just tools in the toolbox for us to lean on whenever we want to answer a question. Like, does this athlete have the range of motion? Yes. Okay. Do they have the strength? Yes. Do they have the RFD? Can they do this in a fast manner? Well, maybe not yet. So that's where we're going to invest our time, right? And we kind of have a general understanding of where they'll be at throughout the process. So uh, we know where or what technologies to lean on, and we know what metrics we want to look at what point in time. So it's just going throughout that the equalizer board, understanding where we're turning up, where we want to measure, and obviously understanding where we want to go, right? So at the end of return to play, we do a 60-minute match load where we're doing tons of we're doing different changes of direction. We're going to jog to another station. We might do a position specific drill. We're going to jog to another station, do another heavy change direction. We might do a sprint or a high speed run in the middle of that. But we set this up as kind of like an exit criteria. So that's the end of what we're trying to get to. And obviously the sport even exceeds that, because then you have the cognitive component where you're interacting within more players. So from there, we're just peeling the layers back. So does the athlete have the capacity to perform the sport specific movement at speed in a live environment with fatigue and then in competition? So all of those things together are the game itself, right? And so from there, we're just trying to figure out where the athlete is in that continuum, and then we have the appropriate measures at each stage. So that's kind of how we're using the technology, if you will. I don't know if I answered your question
Oh
specifically,
my
but
gosh, Derek, you are so well spoken and you explain it. In fact, before you even uttered those words right now, I'm thinking in my head, man, he is laying it out so well. And and as I understand, this is your first podcast. So I don't know if you're a public speaker or not, but if you ever want to shift over into that, you're doing so well with that. So if we were to put an infographic together and lay out the RTP pathway, how many different stages have does fire have? Like, how do you break it up? Or if
I
if
don't.
that's
So
if that's kind of intellectual property you don't want to discuss, then you just let me know.
no, no, it's not so much about that. So we, I wouldn't say we operate within stages, right? So
Oh,
I know, yep. So we we look at it as this big spectrum, right? So performance and RTP lie on that spectrum. RTP, we're just managing risk, right? So performance, we know we can push the guys, but with RTP, we're just a little bit more mindful about the risks. And so that's where the objective data comes in. We're measuring way more frequently than we ever would if we were just focusing on performance for the guys. And so I wouldn't say it's in phases. It's Darcy likes to call it a sushi style menu, where maybe they can't sprint, but they can do something of high force with the legs. So we're going to increase the loading in the gym, and they may be doing something really heavy in the gym, but they that's because they can't do anything that heavy out on the field, right? At that moment in time. And so it's just understanding where we can notch up the intensity in these different buckets. So uh, we, as a group, we want to get the guys in a way where they have the capacities, and that is mainly where our data sits, is in the capacities. And then obviously as we go throughout that spectrum of working all the way up to the game itself, we have some objective data, some subjective data, um, and that just guides our next step. And a lot of this comes down to progressions and regressions of exercise. And that was, I will say that I have to give a guy I worked with at IMG, Brady Welsh, I have to give him tons of credit, because whenever I first started working in that environment, that was my first real job in strength conditioning. He was like, you have to have progressions and regressions for all your exercises.
right
And
on.
at first I was like, okay, like that's a cumbersome task. So, but I sat down and I mapped out as much as I possibly could. And as I was going throughout my career, you start to get different pieces of data to support whether or not that truly was a progression or a regression, right? Like you can look at things like range of motion or stability, and those are obvious, but sometimes you don't really understand, well, this particular exercise actually has this impact on the athlete, or this force output that maybe you thought was less but actually is more, right? And so um, just those kind of sit in the back of my head, and as we incorporate more data, that just starts to refine the list a little bit more. So I'd say again, it's more like that sushi style menu where you're plugging and playing in the different areas. Uh, we operate very much in an exos methodology, where you have your pillar prep, your prep, movement skills, plyometrics, strength and power, your ESD, and then your on-field movement skills. And so from there is something you can always do in each one of those for the most part. Like even if you injure your right ankle, you can still do single leg, band assisted left leg plyometrics. That's something you could definitely still do. So throughout the process, we're asking ourselves, what can the athlete do? And that's what we're programming. And the only thing that gets modified really is that injury site. So it's a spectrum, not really operating in phases, taking it kind of one progression at a time, and then thinking more about function over uh, just the data, right? The data can show you one thing, function can show you another, but together they're really powerful. And this is where like we really lean on the movement skill side of things. That's where we start from, because it is extremely important, and that's where we believe we can have a massive impact on hopefully uh, hopefully decreasing the injury risk for the athlete later on in their career. And so that's where we want to focus our time. So even from the beginning, we might be doing a wall drill, even if you can't accelerate. Okay, can you do skips? No. Okay, can you do a wall drill where you're driving the leg up into that A-frame position? No. Okay, can you at least hold that? Okay, that's where we're going to start. And then our my medical counterpart Sergio, he's done a really good job of integrating more of the variability at each one of those stages, right? And so that's one topic I got really interested in towards the end of my time at IMG, was ecological dynamics, and this was part of part of my master's program, but also I had a mentor there at IMG, Johnny Parks, who uh, he, the whole strength conditioning staff there was amazing. He really added that skill component to it. It's like we can affect skills of athletes just as much as we can affect the capacities of the athlete, right? And so he opened my mind up to that. I've gone down tons of rabbit holes on ecological dynamics now, and like there's plenty of great guys. I think his name's Javier. I don't want to misspeak,
Yeah.
but I think he was on the podcast recently. He's somebody I lean heavily on from what he writes, and Sean Mishka, I think, or who
Yeah.
works closely with him. So um, that's been a really interesting piece to it. But um, just to go back to it, like, yeah, I think we are very movement skill. Sergio adds a variability to that movement skill because they may not be able to get past a reach and a lift, right? A reach and lift on an acceleration wall drill. But there are different ways that we can make that more variable for the athlete, not just for variability's sake, but to actually drive that athlete more towards being able to stabilize that movement pattern before they start locomoting from point A to point B. So yeah, we've done a really good job this previous year testing a lot of those things out, having good conversations around what works, what might not work in our environment, and at the end of the day, being able to systematize all of those things so that if anybody were to drop out, I had a baby last year, and Sergio was out for a period of time, so it's when one person's out, another person can just step in because it's that systematized, and that once we got to that point, things were rolling pretty quick. So, um, yeah, probably a
That's
long-winded
cool.
answer to
No,
to what you
but
asked.
but at the same time, it was fantastic. I love the fact that you guys don't actually delineate stages. It's kind of actually refreshing to me to know that because I think the more we try to create borders and boundaries, the more stringent it becomes on a body that's actually dynamic and not stringent. And so
Hmm.
the fact that it flows more based on performance and just the different metrics that they have is so much better than just saying, okay, you're in stage one, two, three, and so on, because there are some elements that are going to linger in the early phases, and it's going to take a while to progress, while they've progressed very far in these other elements, whether
Hmm.
it's lower body strength, agility, stability, endurance, or coordination or mental acuity and readiness. There's all these different
Yep.
elements. And for me, the progress and regress, that is my that's the wonderful puzzle. I love that because it makes my mind kind of start to churn a little bit. And if you
Hmm.
can break it down into assisted, unassisted, resisted as an overall governing kind of thing for in my mind, and then with Gary Gray and the Gray Institute, or really it was his son Doug that developed these 10 observational essentials, which are all the tweaks that you can put in. How do we affect the environment? How do we affect the load, the angulation, the tempo, the rate, or all of this is
Yeah.
the duration and so on. There's like you can start to play with that, and it becomes almost like you're Beethoven at the piano. You're trying to create this symphony within this athlete, and you're whether you call it the equalizer and turning up the knobs. I totally get it, and that's so
Hmm.
exciting. What speaking of exciting, what excites you about what you're doing aside from your little baby? Of course, congratulations on that. But
Thank
at
you.
work, at least, what do you find is some of the most exciting stuff for you?
Yeah. I feel very privileged to be where I am in Chicago because everybody around me we're having great conversations. And to me, that's what excites me the most about going to work is that I know I'm going to have some kind of interaction with somebody where I'm going to learn something or I'm going to be able to talk something out that I'm interested in and be able to refine some idea. And then not only that is then that could become part of our program, right? So it's not just these aimless thoughts of, oh, I like this over here, but it'll never get integrated. Sometimes I have those, but most of the time we'll have good conversations that we're trying to integrate these things at the club level, right? And so it's not just about the first team; it's about how do we take what we're doing at the first team and make it accessible for the second team and for the academy. Obviously, they have less practitioners that are working with those teams, so they need to be able to replicate some of the things that we're doing. But that it also helps us stay simple and do things that actually work, right? Not get too crazy with some of the ideas that we might have. But to me, that's the thing that excites me the most. Obviously, digging into more exciting like things that aren't being done quite yet, at especially at the MLS soccer level, or even really just soccer in general. Those things that are exciting. We're working on a few things now that I think will be pretty revolutionary in terms of how we just look at some of the metrics that we're getting from GPS and how much more we're able to understand the true load and impact on the athlete, which that then filters down to how we plan and how we prepare for return to play for team training, so on and so forth. And then just thinking about some of the things that I think are on the horizon for some teams, but really trying to understand the metabolic cost of what the athlete is doing. So I like we have external load metrics, right? And those are great. And
Yeah.
understanding power of the athlete in multiple contexts, that's phenomenal. It's a step in the right direction. But I think the question all of us are trying to answer is what is the impact on the athlete, both metabolically, what do we expect from a response from that athlete in the coming days, and then planning and preparing for that, right? And so if you have an understanding of how this workload may have affected that athlete in the past, that can help you certainly prepare for the future. Now, it's not to say that it's a one for one thing that athlete could have slept 3 hours less the next time we do it, and it's a completely different response, or it could have been 20 degrees hotter, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think that's where some of obviously the machine learning and the AI can start to get integrated into that. And those who I think adopt that and are able to use that in that way will definitely have an advantage and a step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, you still have to make decisions and you still have to implement them to other humans, right? And so it's not losing sight of that. But those are the things that excite me the most.
Do you guys do blood testing?
We don't at the moment.
Okay. I know it's
I'm not sure.
private. It's kind of obviously invasive physiologically, but I'm just
Mhm.
wondering if we're like you mentioned metabolic and I'm just wondering how much we can glean from regular blood panels. But
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I know several people, several clubs that do that, and they find it valuable, and other things too. Like obviously the thermography. I know some people are
Yeah.
fans of that, and yeah, I think they're just they're tools and there's information to ask better questions and have conversations with athletes and just try to dig down to the root of it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us having a conversation with the athlete and us implementing some kind of change. So it still needs to lead to a decision that gets made, and having the right people around you, the right structure of the organization, I think definitely helps you make better decisions.
Okay, how about this then, Derek? What about blood flow restriction training? Do you guys? I know a few clubs and some S&C coaches that really incorporate that uh, as the season progresses, especially toward the postseason, because the requirements are less loading, and as the players get more fatigued and the season comes on, it's a nice way of maintaining hypertrophy and intensity and so on without excessive loads on the system. Do you guys do BFR? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, so we don't really implement that at the team level just because of the logistics of BFR from a, a performance enhancing direction, I should say.
Yeah.
But we do utilize Hydro shorts for our recovery days. That's one way that we're using them.
Just have
But
a
in
whole
terms
row of
of
chairs and they just sit back and watch some TV?
so we do we'll go on the bike. Like there's
Okay.
the Hydro bike protocol, right? And so we'll do that for as part of our recovery day. And it's been extremely useful. So
Nice.
that's been one way. We use BFR at the RTP level all the time, from a especially earlier on when we can't load the tissue quite as heavily. That's a way for us to get an increased metabolic response from what we could have gotten not having it. So that's
And have you
certainly.
learned some stuff with it? Because I mean, it's really, although there's, I'm just going to say it's really new, even though it's been around
Mm.
for a little while now. It's still, in terms of people adopting it, it's relatively new compared to so many other modalities. What are you learning from it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think we've learned, especially this year. We had an ACL case who he used it pretty heavily earlier on, and I can't remember exactly when we dexed him during his return to play, but he didn't lose hardly any lean muscle mass, and towards the end,
Wow.
obviously uh, towards the end of his return to play, we redexed him, and again, like, he increased in muscle mass, and obviously you're going to have some discrepancies, especially given maybe where they take a graph from, so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, we've used it in that way. I've used it in the past when I was at DC United. We use it pretty heavily there, so definitely think it has its place. But again, it's just a tool to work around. It's a regression, right? You're regressing load on somebody. Uh, you may be progressing the metabolic response that they might get. And anybody who's done like a BFR bike would tell you, or a BFR walk. Obviously, it's not easy and it's not fun. Um, but at the end of the day, you still have to. What's going to transfer is being able to put that power out into a locomotive task on the field, succumbing to gravity, right? So like, it's beneficial, but it's, again, it's not the end all be all. Just like no tool is the end all be all. It's just a tool in the toolbox.
Sure. Okay. I think probably one of the final questions here, because we're coming up on the clock. You're just about to have your players show up and begin preseason training. And what are you most excited about?
Uh, I mean, I'm excited to just get back to the routine of what we do on a day-to-day basis that always stimulates my brain, right? So like, to me, that's the biggest thing. But we have a few new staff members and new people in places that I think will bring fresh ideas, and people who are really keen to move the needle of performance. And so understanding kind of where they come from, how they view things, that's really exciting for me. And then understanding that the players get to reap the benefits of that as well, of us having really good conversations, and that getting filtered down to the players. I think it's really only beneficial, right? And so I'm excited for that. That's probably the biggest thing, but I'm excited to get back to work.
Right on, man. Okay,
Yeah.
so obviously people can connect with you through LinkedIn, but can we follow your trials and tribulations in Chicago Fire online with social media in any way?
I'm not too big on social media. The I primarily use Instagram for personal, just posting pictures of me and my family, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I am part of the Professional Soccer Performance Association, so we're we do put stuff out on social media there. So I will have a part in that, in the social media on that site. So if you wanted to check out some of the good things that we're doing for professional soccer performance practitioners in America, that would be a good place to go. And then we do put some educational content up there for our members, and we have different talks, and at the end of each year have a conference, right? So it's that's been exciting, and probably the most amount of social media I've ever done. So that's primarily where you can find any information.
Well, I'll make sure we got a connection, a link in the
Yeah.
description below the podcast for sure. Dude, this has been great. I really, not only am I grateful you give me a little time before season begins, but just creating a new friendship here and getting this rapport with you and learning so much. I honestly, I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite, and it was good to talk to somebody who's so interested and keen to just learn. That's
Heck yeah.
to me, that's all there is to it.
And there we go, another one in the books. I can't thank Derek enough for all his insights. The conversation was just electric. And, well, thanks to the Chicago Fire FC for letting this happen as well. And wishing them the best as the season starts to get underway. Remember, we've got a couple of sponsors we want to kind of acknowledge and give a listen to. And then we'll see you next week. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I gotta reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kineticiq.com.